Tonight on CBC Vancouver News.
As a mom of two under two, I'm stressed out as it is.
It doesn't seem like there's going to be a whole lot of services over and above emergency.
A new hospital in Surrey without maternity or pediatric care? Residents and business leaders have some serious concerns.
We absolutely need more sick time if this is going to carry on like this.
Ill children, burned out parents, and a creaking healthcare system. The call for more sick days as BC records a spike in child influenza deaths.
Well, thank you all for coming. I hope you have found it reasonably interesting.
And hovercraft history. We'll take you on board a reunion between a rare vessel and its BC builder.
This is CBC Vancouver News.
Good evening, I'm Dan Burritt. Thanks for joining us. Anita is away tonight. Plans for a new hospital in a growing part of Surrey are not getting quite the praise one might expect. The problem is what is not included in the $1.7 billion proposal. As Belpuri reports, locals and business leaders say the hospital, as it stands, will leave the community with serious shortfalls.
Hi, Ellie. I love you.
Growing families face challenges, not the least of which is an overburdened healthcare system.
As a mom of two under two, I'm stressed out as it is.
It's good news Surrey will get a much-needed second hospital. Bad news that it won't include maternity or pediatric services.
If I have a hospital that's not even 5 minutes away, that could potentially take care of all my kids' needs if needed. That's wonderful. But yeah, it is a bit disappointing that, if something is, really wrong, I will go there, but probably would just have to wait and to be transferred anyways.
The 168-bed hospital includes emergency, 5 operating rooms, and a cancer clinic.
It's almost just like an urgent care is what it's going to be. It doesn't seem like there's going to be a whole lot of services over and above emergency.
Cloverdale is one of Surrey's fastest growing communities. By 2051, its population is projected to hit 120,000.
Their job is to take care of future needs.
The call is for a full-service hospital.
Taxpayers' money might be better spent if they were to look at the demographics of the area a little bit more carefully and then have them build something a little bit more robust.
At $1.7 billion, the investment is the most significant in Cloverdale's history.
We have one of the largest children population in Western Canada. It's really in the hands of Fraser Health to determine what the true medical needs are, and this is where the shortfalls are coming.
Criticism and concerns that this site won't include maternity or pediatric services are getting attention. Fraser Health now wants feedback on the new hospital plan. Last month, the Health Authority conducted an online survey for input from local organizations and residents. Findings haven't yet been released.
I think that I'd tell them a growing community with younger families and younger children, PEDS would be one of the more important departments to have in a hospital, a community like this.
Hospital construction is set to begin next year. Belpuri, CBC News, Surrey.
Health Canada has now approved the first bivalent COVID-19 booster shot for children aged 5 to 11. The Pfizer-BioNTech vaccine targets the original virus strain plus the more recent BA4 and BA5 Omicron subvariants. The National Advisory Committee on Immunization recommends it be offered to children at a higher risk of severe illness at least 6 months after their primary series. Still with illness, parents and guardians in BC are struggling to keep up. Children continue to get sick as influenza, COVID, and RSV hit hard. And the line of when to send your kid to school or stay home yourself is not always clear. As Yasmin Gandam reports, some parents' sick leave and their other options have run out.
I just felt like I was at breaking point.
Sarah Ryan is a mom of 2 in Kamloops. She has used 18 sick days this year to care for her kids and doesn't have any left.
I think it was October when my kids were sick. I was ready to just quit everything, quit my job.
She says both her kids have fallen ill with COVID, the flu, and RSV.
My daycare has still a 0 symptom policy because it's a home daycare. So if the daycare owner gets sick, then she has to close the daycare.
With no sick leave left, she worries about what to do if her kids get sick again.
Do we reintroduce masks again? Can we make our kids wear a mask again? They hate masks.
This pediatrician says in the current climate, any flu symptom is enough for a child to stay home.
Even when they've got a new, just new runny nose and sore throat where we know something might be in the mail. Because we're seeing that doctors' offices, emergency departments, hospitals are all full of children.
But keeping kids home isn't always easy for some. Labor experts say women are more likely to stay home to care for kids than men, and some who do not work in jobs that permit working remotely face extra challenges.
In particular, women in the service sector and in frontline services. And so that may well require taking unpaid leave in order to care for children.
The BC Federation of Labor is calling on the province to offer more paid sick days amid a surge in respiratory illnesses.
Folks shouldn't have to choose between going to work and feeding their families or paying their bills, right? And that is, currently the situation. 5 days doesn't go very far if you get a COVID diagnosis.
The province currently offers 5 paid sick days to eligible employees. The BC Federation of Labor is hoping to up that to 15. But parents like Ryan say that's not nearly enough.
I've used 18, right? So 5 is like a drop in the bucket.
This parent just hanging on and hoping her kids manage to dodge more illness. Yasmin Gantam, CBC News, Vancouver.
To other health news now, the BC Centre for Disease Control quietly issued a warning this week about an increase in avian flu cases and the potential risk to humans. Our Michelle Gassoub has more on the story and joins us now. Michelle, what triggered this warning?
Dan, we've been talking about avian flu in this province since cases exploded back in April. But in a memo to doctors, the BC CDC says the past few weeks have been a game changer. Half of the infections in this province have happened since mid-November, and a majority of current infections are in commercial operations in the Fraser Valley. There are 48 infected locations there, including chicken, turkey, and duck operations. And that very quick explosion in cases means there is a higher risk the disease could be transmitted to people. Now, the memo is very clear. Animal to human transmission is rare, but people who come into contact with infected birds, like farm workers, for example, are at risk. And the BC CDC says people who have symptoms of avian flu and have had some kind of exposure to birds or animals should be tested.
Michelle, what symptoms of avian flu do people need to watch for?
Dan, the symptoms listed in this memo are actually quite similar to what you would expect for a regular cold or flu. So things like coughing, sore throat, fatigue, fever, headache, and the symptoms can be very mild. Now, again, transmission from animals to humans is considered a rare event, but clinicians are being asked to test anyone who has those symptoms and has also come into contact with a potentially exposed bird within 10 days. And there are things you can do to protect yourself. So, of course, avoiding poultry and wild birds, especially if they're sick or behaving unusually, avoiding bird droppings, ensuring your eggs and poultry are well cooked, and getting your annual flu shot is also recommended, especially if you are a person who works with live poultry. Now, in terms of what precautions are in place, if a farm is infected, the Canadian Food Inspection Agency does go in, quarantine those locations, and destroy the birds as quickly as possible. Most importantly here, if you suspect you've been exposed, you're being asked to talk to your doctor and get tested.
All right. Michelle Gassoub joining us live tonight. Thank you. To other news now, we're learning more about the woman stabbed to death in a Surrey home earlier this week.
Investigators can now identify the victim as 40-year-old Harpreet Kaur of Surrey, and we do so in the hopes of advancing our investigation.
The attack happened Wednesday night at a home near 127th Street and 66th Avenue in Newton. As we said, the victim, 40-year-old Harpreet Kaur, was killed. Police arrested a 40-year-old man at the scene. He has since been released. IHIT says the victim and her attacker knew each other. Anyone with information is asked to contact investigators. Vancouver's longest consecutive serving city councillor and a local political mainstay has died.
On the one hand, you have people crying out that they want a better transportation system. On the other hand, who's going to pay for it?
George Puel served in Vancouver public life for 40 years from 1962 to 2002. He spent 26 years on City Council with the right-leaning NPA, chaired the Greater Vancouver Regional District, now Metro Vancouver, and was instrumental in creating TransLink, which he also chaired. A 6-month bus strike in 2001 prompted someone to dump manure on his front lawn, which he recounted in an interview years ago. Puel was also a star athlete at UBC. The city says the Canadian flag will fly at half-mast on all city buildings in his memory. George Puel was in his early 90s. Sir Matthew Begbie Elementary School in Vancouver now has a new name. The school will now be known as Wakwanis Tishiakwam. It was gifted to it by the Musqueam Indian Band. It means the sun rising over the horizon.
Can we say Wakwanis? Tishiakwam. Wakwanis Tishiakwam. Wakwanis Tishiakwam.
The school was named after BC's first Chief Justice. Members say the old name brought back memories of a painful past, and the new name will herald a new beginning for the community. Ottawa today unveiled a strategy for what are known as critical minerals. The plan aims to speed up project approvals for raw materials that will be key in achieving net zero carbon emissions. But as Olivia Stefanovic reports, tough challenges do lie ahead.
It might sound counterintuitive, but the federal government believes mining is key to unlocking Canada's clean energy potential.
Any plan that does not include thoughtful consideration of how to develop and how to deploy critical clean technologies is not a serious climate plan.
Ottawa is cutting red tape to excavate the materials needed for batteries, solar panels, wind turbines, and electric vehicles more quickly.
It cannot take us 12 to 15 years to open a new mine in this country, not if we want to achieve our climate goals.
The World Bank expects a 500% increase in demand for these elements, lithium, graphite, nickel, and copper by 2050.
We're in trouble. We've got climate change is real. We used to say just a few years ago that the North is feeling it 3 times as anywhere else. We're now saying 4 times.
The Northwest Territories is rich in these critical minerals, but it only has one operating mine. Before it opens any more, it needs new roads and hydroelectricity to replace diesel generators.
Speeding up the regulatory process is only really going to do one thing, and that's going to put Indigenous nations and industry and government at odds.
He says companies need to collaborate with Indigenous communities to seek consent and ensure all environmental concerns are addressed.
It sets off a lot of alarm bells, actually, because we've already gone through several rounds of basically deregulating.
Even with almost $4 billion on the table to speed up approvals, some say it's still unclear whether the money will make a difference without direct investment.
Some of the examples of where these processes have dragged out actually have to do with markets and companies just not being able to find the capital or the justification to build something.
The pressure is on for Canada to become a leader in clean energy technology. Unless it can smooth out its regulatory process, it will remain dependent on other countries. Olivia Stefanovic, CBC News, Ottawa.
You may have heard about the shortage of Christmas trees this year. Perhaps you're thinking of traipsing into the woods to harvest your very own. You can, but there are some rules. Last year, we sent John Hernandez out to collect a tree and walk you through how to do it. Time to revisit John's Christmas tree tale.
So it's the holidays, and what better way to get into a merry mood than to cut down your own Christmas tree? Well, to do it legally, the first thing you should know is there's some red tape, and not the festive kind. You need to register for a permit on the BC government's website. It's quick, easy, and free. Print off the paperwork, and the adventure begins. Before you take off on your Christmas adventure, make sure you have your tree cutting permit with you at all times. Some other useful items, a first aid kit, some rope, and the right tool for the job. In BC, you can't just chop down a tree anywhere. Odds are you'll have to go on a bit of a trek. Trusty online maps from the province show you exactly where you can cut, depending on which region you live. For us, that meant a trip up the Sea to Sky Highway north of Vancouver.
Let's go.
Be prepared for a hike in.
We're here just outside of Squamish. This is the closest place you can come to if you live in Metro Vancouver to cut down your own tree. And if you do have a permit, you'll have to do it underneath power lines. That's because these areas are regularly cleared.
Head to high ground to get a good view of what's in the area. And don't be afraid to size up any potential candidates.
Before you start cutting, make sure you find the perfect tree for you. I like this one. Make sure it fits right on top of your car, and when you start cutting, make sure you do it right at the base. Nothing to it. Now, a lot of people might come out here with the preconceived idea that the trees out here are full and picturesque like you'd see in the movies, when in fact, a lot of them are actually quite sparse. But they're still beautiful because you cut it down yourself.
Safely secure the tree to the roof of your car, or even squeeze it inside if you can. Then you're ready to hit the road.
Steady as a rock. Well, she's all loaded up. Now it's time to head home, bust out the decorations, and sip some eggnog. John Hernandez, CBC News, Squamish.
Lumberjack Hernandez, you smooth operator. My God. And he chose a decent tree, mildly Charlie Brown-esque, but that's okay. Kuljeet Kaila, is it a good weekend to go cut down your own Christmas tree if you want to?
It will be a little bit wet. If you can, maybe hold off a day or two. We do have a strong frontal system that came in earlier today. We'll take a look at our time lapse from earlier today. Brought in all kinds of activity for clouds and then started bringing that rain that we've been waiting for almost a week now. It feels like we've had this rainfall warning coming in. Finally, today we started to get some of that rain. And it's not a lot of rain that we're getting. We're only getting about a millimeter per hour into tomorrow, and then we're going to return to pretty dry conditions. Now, this frontal system is coming in off the coast. It's bringing some snow for East Vancouver Island, so Courtney and Campbell River. Also bringing some snow for the Sea to Sky Highway, and a wind warning for Greater Victoria, up to 90-kilometer-an-hour winds tonight. We could see some of that here in Vancouver as well, near the water, up to about 60 kilometers an hour. Now, after Saturday and into Sunday and into early next week, this system will clear out quite nicely, bringing drier conditions. It's also going to bring some snow to parts of the province, the Caribou region, the Kootenay region, and even the southern interior. Temperatures outside right now holding steady at around 4 degrees across the board, it looks like. And for tomorrow in British Columbia, like I was saying, some snow for the Caribou region, -6, -3 in Williams Lake, and Dease Lake at -14. They're going to be looking at a -27 overnight. It's getting very cold. We saw the sun set under some rainy conditions. It will rise again tomorrow under some rainy conditions, and a high of 6 degrees tomorrow as this rain continues. I'll have more details coming up, Dan.
Sounds good. Thanks, Kuljeet.
You're welcome.
It looks like something straight out of 1950s science fiction, but in the 1960s, it was as cutting edge as it got. Now a rare homemade hovercraft has been reunited with its builder at the Vancouver Maritime Museum. Our Leanne Young was there with his family.
You had to be very quick. Oh, guys.
It's not going to start, is it?
No, it's not going to start, no.
David Scott is in familiar terrain. He built this 1,100-pound foam-filled metal monster in 1965.
Do it side to side again. Yeah, this one's moving.
This is the first time the 86-year-old has been able to show most of his family Grandpa, or Gumpy's, history-making obsession.
It's really cool that he made it.
He's always been such a creative, hardworking person who has these
just outlandish ideas and makes them real. So yeah, it's incredible to see it in person.
Very excited because I hadn't seen it for 40 years, and it was a big part of my life 50 or 60 years ago when I built it.
It all started with this.
Try not to drop it when it comes apart.
A double-hulled hovercraft prototype, Scott's final project as a UBC engineering student in 1964. And this was as cutting-edge as it comes. Hovercrafts had only been invented a couple years prior.
The test results of the model were good, and I thought, well, hell, I'll go ahead and build a full-size one. And so over the next couple of years, in my spare time in my basement in Tempe Crescent, I built this.
2 years and 2,000 hours later, Scott believes he built the first private hovercraft in Canada. He had to take out a wall in his North Vancouver home just to move it. But the maiden journey made it more than worthwhile, with his daughter Anne and her mother Margaret watching. Under orders by the Department of Transport, he took off a solid 9 meters.
And after that, they said, well, when they saw that it wasn't going to hurt anybody, they said, well, you don't need to have it tethered.
He took it for a couple more spins, some more successful than others.
Because it had so much momentum, it kept on going, sliding on the snow, and hit the Volkswagen. And the owner, who had been a friend of mine, was quite upset. And I remember saying to him, well, look, you've got the only Volkswagen in Canada that's been hit by a hovercraft.
The vessel was soon retired, kept here at the Vancouver Maritime Museum's storage facility. Scott went on to work in real estate, but Gumpy's stories as an inventor were legendary. And after this visit, no longer just fabled.
Well, thank you all for coming. I hope you have found it reasonably interesting.
Oh, very much so.
Yeah.
Amazing. Way to go. So amazing. Congratulations.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I'm proud of you.
Leanne Young, CBC News, Vancouver.
A coroner's inquest into the death of a Cree teenager who died in government care has issued 18 recommendations. After the break, we'll speak with the lawyer for the victim's mother about what can be learned from his death. Stick around. And thank you for watching our commercial-free live stream tonight. Santa Claus recently made his way through Windsor, Ontario. He was picking up letters and telling children there's still time to get them all the way to the North Pole.
My name is Gianna and I am 7 years old. For Christmas, one thing I need is a jacket. One thing I want is Lego set. I can't wait for you to visit. Thank you. Love, Gianna.
What are you guys putting in your letters right now?
We're putting what we want for Christmas.
That's exciting. What do you want?
What do I want? I want a new jacket because it's almost winter.
It's cold out there, hey?
Yeah.
What about you? What are you gonna ask for Santa?
I want a dog and I want new shoes because it's getting cold outside and my shoes are very thin.
So we try to focus on things that we need, which is like clothing, bedding, things like that. Wants the electronics like video games, toys, cats and dogs. And then wishes was just something that they wished for. A lot of them still wished for toys, but we did that just to kind of make it easier for them.
The staff is incredible, and they look at those lists and they look at those wishes and the wants and the needs, and if things are really dire and need to be taken care of, then the staff takes that on. And they'll let the principal know, and Kim will let me know, and with the sisters and our donors, we try to provide whatever we can to give them a good Christmas. It's never a question of what these teachers and EAs and secretaries and custodians and principals and vice principals, everybody has a part in being part of the St. James community, knowing what these families need and how they can best provide for them.
coroner's inquest into the death of an Indigenous teenager who took his own life in an Abbotsford group home more than 2 years ago has now concluded. That inquest into the death of Cree teen Trayvon Desjardins ended with the jury giving 18 recommendations. They include more family-based services for children in care and a faster response when those children go missing. The 17-year-old died by suicide in 2020. It took 4 days before his body was found in the closet of his room. The jury recommends BC stop housing Indigenous foster children in group homes as soon as possible and provide teens like Trayvon with care tailored more specifically to their Indigenous cultures. For more on these findings and the reactions to them, we're now joined by Sarah Rauch. She is co-counsel for Samantha Chalafu, Trayvon's mother. Sarah, first of all, what do you, and perhaps if you can tell us what Samantha thinks of these recommendations?
I can tell you that the inquest process was a long process, and right at the very end, we get these recommendations from the jury. To digest the recommendations, I guess it's still fairly new. They're fairly limited in terms of all the evidence that we heard.
Now, some of them, I note, out of 18 recommendations to the Ministry of Children and Family Development, the Fraser Valley Aboriginal Children and Family Services Society is one that says collaborate with Indigenous communities to reassess current and future placement for Indigenous children in care, to create a culturally appropriate and safe environment, and implement a new model of care to reflect the Indigenous model of care provided to children. What do you make of those specific findings, especially in Trayvon's case?
It's crucial that that happened. So we're very happy that the jury made that recommendation. We're hoping that that recommendation and the others that address the systemic factors that contributed, we say, to the lack of safety with respect to Trayvon's care, we're hoping that they'll be implemented.
Mm-hmm. Now, another that pops out is number 10 that says create a policy to ensure staff are aware that missing children are to be reported immediately to the police. Does that one surprise you, given that in most cases, most reasonable people would think that is a given, that you should report missing children immediately to police?
Yeah, so I mean, it doesn't surprise me insofar as the evidence that we heard about what happened in Trayvon's case. But yes, absolutely. In terms of the public, you would think that that would be happening anyway.
What has this process been like, as much as you can speak for her, for Samantha, and how she's dealing with this now?
Samantha is brokenhearted, and this process has been difficult for her because it's been the first time that she's heard a lot of the information after over 2 years. And she's hearing it at the same time as the public is hearing it. So she's not had a chance to privately learn many of the details that the public learned at the same time she did. Mm-hmm. And that's, I think that's difficult. Those are my words, not hers, but I think that seems very difficult for her. I know she's been frustrated as she testified right from the beginning, trying to get information, trying to find out what was going on, trying to find out what was happening and where was her son.
Lastly, what do you hope comes out of this concretely?
Well, I really hope that all the people that were involved in the inquest, all of the participants, pay close attention. I think there have been some changes made already. And I also hope that Indigenous jurors can continue to be active in the legal system and in the coroner's inquest system. I think that helps a lot in order to have it be truly a public inquest where there's a jury that understands the issues and the systemic issues and the very personal issues that are going on for Samantha Chalafu in this case.
Sarah Rauch, we appreciate your time. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
A new investigation suggests there may have been more deaths in Quebec's residential schools. Newly discovered photos, unpublished reports, and survivor accounts found potentially dozens more Indigenous children who died. That story is coming up.
Finally, on the news portion of our broadcast, a new rock video. This one to raise money to make sure Canada's food banks are full for Christmas. As Georges Tremel reports from Vancouver, the title of the video comes from an old saying.
Action speaks louder than words. That's the message of this new video just put together by Canadian rock artists. It speaks of the plight of the poor, especially of their hunger, and of the need to help.
Bottom line is because I care about people that don't have enough to eat, people that are locked into a self-perpetuating poverty situation, and hopefully this will alleviate some of that and maybe spur some elected officials to change things around.
The proceeds from the sales will go to food banks right across the country. The Vancouver Food Bank is trying to get enough food for one extra day of giving just before Christmas. These volunteers collected a whole van full of food.
People are really willing to chip in, and when it's down, it's great.
In October '82, the Vancouver Food Bank gave out 225 bags of food. In October '85, it gave out over 15,000 bags.
All across the country, more and more people who never thought they would be poor are now living well below the poverty line.
The boxes were slow to fill today, but the volunteers hope the record and video will have a ripple effect across the country and make many more people aware of poverty and hunger in Canada. Georges Tremel, CBC News, Vancouver.
Provincial and territorial leaders are renewing calls for Ottawa to boost spending on health care. They want the federal government to come to the table to negotiate a new deal on funding. But as Tom Perry tells us, Ottawa is sticking to its demand, seeking guarantees and accountability to give out more federal dollars.
Across Canada, signs of a healthcare system in crisis. Long waits or even closures at emergency rooms, frustrated patients, and burned out medical staff. Canada's premiers once again today calling on the federal government to step up with more cash.
Now more than ever, Canadians expect their political leaders to get together for necessary and serious discussions to ensure the sustainability of the healthcare systems that they depend on.
Provincial and territorial leaders renewing their demand for a meeting with Prime Minister Justin Trudeau.
Set a date. We will put aside our whole schedule, all 13 premiers, to show up to Ottawa and sit down and let's hammer out a deal.
But Ottawa, the provinces and territories disagree on some fundamental points. The premiers say the federal government covers just 22% of healthcare spending. Ottawa says that ignores tax point transfers that have been in place for decades and pushed the federal contribution to roughly a third.
The goal is to have a 50-50 funding partner, and with the transfer of tax points and the cash transfers, they believe that they're at 35%. Then it seems to me that we're about 10 to 15 percentage points off.
But the feds say money isn't the only issue.
We look across Canada, on average, provinces and territories are running surpluses. So if it were dollars, it wouldn't be important to talk to the federal government. They would have all the dollars needed to invest in healthcare.
Ottawa also making it clear if there is new federal money, it will come with strings attached.
A plan to send unconditional transfers to finance ministers is not a health plan.
For now, there's no plan for Justin Trudeau to sit down with the premiers and hash out any new deal. Money may not be the only problem facing Canada's healthcare system right now, but this squabble between the federal, provincial, and territorial governments can hardly provide any comfort for Canadians facing long waits for care and healthcare workers who are overworked and exhausted. Tom Perry, CBC News, Ottawa.
A new investigation by our colleagues at Radio-Canada suggests there may have been more deaths in Quebec's residential schools than first thought. They've combed through newly discovered photos, unpublished reports, and survivor accounts, and found potentially dozens of Indigenous children who died and are missing from official accounts. Melissa Francois has the details and a warning for you. The story contains disturbing details.
Jenny Pachano spent 8 years in a residential school on Fort George Island on the shore of the Bay James. It took her 70 years to open up about what she experienced there.
The supervisor came in and started yelling at her. Get up, get dressed, go outside. They announced that she had died.
Her name was Ellen Bobish, and it doesn't appear on any list of children who have lost their lives in Quebec's residential school. George Pachano from Fort George Survivors Committee also shared some of the testimonies he gathered.
There was a basement, and there was no concrete floor, so it was just a dirt floor. There's one story that I heard that somebody saw crosses in there. People bringing flowers down there. So they assumed there were burial grounds.
With this information in hand, the Cree Nation of Chisasibi says it will go forward with georadar searches. 5 potential burial sites have been identified on the island. And that's not all. There is also a photo added recently in the archives of the National Centre for Truth and Reconciliation. A priest from Saint-Marc-de-Figuerie in Abitibi stands in front of the casket of an unknown child. Records say no children have lost their lives in that school. 38 children never came back from residential school in the province. Radio-Canada's enquête identified other cases of potential deaths in all 6 of Quebec's residential schools, none of which were part of official data. Minister Yann Lafrenière reacted today, saying this is only the beginning.
There will be surprises. To be honest, there's a lot to discover. This is not over.
A large part of residential school history in Quebec is still unknown. Searches on Fort George Island should start next summer. Melissa Francois, CBC News, Montreal.
Brittany Griner has returned to the United States after almost 10 months in Russian jail. Griner arrived in Texas a day after a prisoner swap with Russia. She was originally detained in Moscow after cannabis oil was found in her flight luggage. President Vladimir Putin was asked today if further swaps might happen. He says anything is possible and that contacts continue. Russia continues to hold Paul Whelan, a former Marine who spent his early years in Canada. Whelan was bypassed in yesterday's deal. The Beachland family got a surprise after a wild predator showed up on the doorstep. What environmentalists say you ought to do and not do. Next.
particular, your seat numbers are listed just above the seats and above the windows. Thank you. All aboard! This steam engine was built in 1912 in Montreal, Quebec, so it's pretty old. It's a long chain.
People in Port Alberni bid farewell to an iconic local eatery earlier this month. Solda's family restaurant was open for more than half a century. And as Wamish Hamilton shows us, saying goodbye was bittersweet for the family and that community.
It's an emotional day in Port Alberni. After 53 years, a staple of the community has closed its doors. Solda's family restaurant is no more.
It's all family today. Today's all family. It's all my sister from Alberta. It's all family.
Ivo Solda's parents opened the restaurant in 1969. It quickly became a local favorite. The eatery thrived when Port Alberni was booming, when it had one of the highest per capita incomes in all of Canada. It even survived the lows through the resource economy crash and when families left.
Just the mall days and just developing a restaurant at that time. My dad, just designing it, getting it done. And over the years, with the downfall of the forestry industry and all that, it was a tough time at that time.
Ivo took over the business, but it stops here. His kids aren't interested in running the restaurant. Despite that, the family came together to keep it going in its final weeks.
The city is really expanding. We've come a long ways from the little mill town that we were used to being known for, and we have customers who are sad, but some are really happy about what's going on in Port Alberni.
It was busy here on its final day. Well-wishers stopped by to say goodbye and wish the Soldas congratulations on a well-earned retirement.
I'd like to thank all the customers over the years. That's the best part of the job. Otherwise, too much work.
Customers say the restaurant meant as much to them as it did to the family.
I feel pretty good about it. I've been coming to Soldas for over 50 years. It's been a real part of my growing up as a kid.
To me, I'm trying not to get emotional because so many meetings we had here, luncheon meetings, so many family gatherings here.
It's bittersweet, but Ivo feels it's the right time to close this chapter of their lives as they begin to create a new one. Wamish Hamilton, CBC News, Port Alberni.
Porter Airlines is embarking on a major expansion, planning to go head-to-head with Canada's national carriers. It currently operates from Toronto's Centre Island. Now it's announcing new routes out of Pearson International Airport. Philippe de Montigny looks at the possible impact on our air travel.
After grounding its planes for a year and a half during the pandemic,
Porter Airlines wants to grow faster and fly further than ever before.
We're recovered as a business, and so we think now is a great time for Porter to enter with a lot of these new markets.
Starting in February, it will run its new, larger capacity Embraer jets out of Toronto's Pearson Airport, with routes to Montreal and Ottawa, and adding Vancouver to its list of destinations. It means more competition for Air Canada and WestJet on the busiest routes in the country, a move many passengers welcome.
More competition is great for the consumer.
If I'm arriving after work hours or something, if it's cheaper, yeah, I'd go to Pearson.
Obviously, more options, the better it is for travelers, right? So we're hoping that they do that, and I'll be one of the ones that'll be on that.
And Porter isn't just focused on big cities.
You'll also see us enter some smaller and mid-sized communities as well, and we'll be announcing a lot of those in the coming weeks and months.
But some experts say expanding more widely into the Canadian market and truly becoming a national carrier may not pay off.
I believe they are more likely to develop further into the United States and faster than they would to develop within Canada, because the market is very limited in Canada.
And the chaos at Pearson last summer with flight delays and lost luggage still turns off some travelers.
It's just really busy and it's hectic, it's unorganized, and the wait times are really long and unpredictable.
Now, there's also convenience. Many prefer to commute through this downtown Toronto airport. Porter originally tried to bring jets to Billy Bishop, but various levels of government blocked plans to expand the runway and allow these larger planes to fly here. Philippe Damonsigny, CBC News, Toronto.
Vancouver-born actor Ryan Reynolds met King Charles and the Queen Consort today. He and American actor Rob McElhenney met the royals in Wales, where those two own the Wrexham Football Club.
Rob and I both said early on, and this holds true, and hopefully for the rest of our lives, that we'll do anything to uplift and elevate this community and this club, and having the King pay a visit is certainly one way to do it, that's for sure. We're very excited.
The actors bought the club last year for $2.5 million. The royal couple met with those two owners, the players and the staff, on the pitch. The football club was formed in 1864. It's, in fact, the third oldest professional football team in the world. Back in this country, an Okanagan family got an unexpected visitor this week.
We live way up in the mountains, so we get lots of, people's cats and stray animals, raccoons, stuff like that. But I happened to look out the window just to see whose cat it was, and I could see the black tips of its ears, and I was like, there's no way that's what that is. So I ran downstairs with my phone just because my kids, I've got 4 of them, and they're all obsessed with animals.
Yeah, that's not a house cat. A young bobcat was on their property, peering through their window. The animal had been there for quite a while, intrigued by the family cat. The family snapped some photos and video and shared them with friends and family. It's since gone viral, but don't be fooled. Environmentalists say the animals are predators who often hunt smaller animals, so don't let your cat out or that cat in. It's a cute one, but don't let it in the house.
I was gonna say.
I know.
It's so cute.
It's not cuddly, though. Last, I think, February, there was a guy who shamed a lynx because it killed a bunch of chickens in BC. Held it up to the camera and sort of rubbed its nose in it. Not a good idea. Don't do that.
Okay.
Okay.
I won't consider it cute then.
Please don't. Please don't. Let's get to what people might be able to do outside.
Yes, outside, a little bit of rain. We've been waiting for this pretty much all week. It's been on and off again, and finally it arrived today because of a low pressure system that also arrived earlier, and it brought with it a few warnings. We have a snowfall warning in effect for the Sea to Sky Highway for East Vancouver Island, so Campbell River and Courtney part of that, and also a wind warning, 90-kilometer-an-hour winds for Greater Victoria tonight as well. So cold conditions coming, and the rain that is coming our way overnight and into tomorrow, little bits of it. 15 millimeters total tomorrow in Vancouver, 20 in Coquitlam on the North Shore. Of course, higher elevations getting more of it. Abbotsford and Surrey, only about 10 millimeters of rain tomorrow, so not too bad. The other trend that we're seeing is cold temperatures across BC over the next 4 or 5 days. -3 in Revelstoke by Tuesday, -4 in Kelowna. Tomorrow night in Dease Lake, it's going to be -27, and that has made the board of some of the coldest temperatures in BC today. -22 in Fort Nelson, -6 in Prince George. They'll be getting some snow tomorrow. We are on seasonal right now, 5 degrees, about 6.5 is usually what the seasonal average is. Rainfall totals again, 15 millimeters today, another 10 coming tomorrow. We're also going to get some wind as well by the water, 60-kilometer-an-hour winds, and of course that Sea to Sky Highway, that snowfall warning bringing about 25 centimeters of snow overnight. The rain will last for 1 day only, and then we return back to sunshine all the way through into next week. The trend is dry conditions, sunny all week, but the temperatures overnight getting very low, -4 by the end of Friday. So overnight temperatures will be quite cold. Dan?
Okay, we'll bundle up. Thanks very much, Kelvin.
You're welcome.
A New Brunswick painter is set out to immortalize members of Fredericton's homeless community. How the artist shows them in a new light after this.
Walter was born on the Orkney Islands in Scotland. His father had worked for the Hudson's Bay Company, so once he was old enough, he came over here and he worked as a boat builder on a 5-year contract, and he decided to settle on the south side of the North Saskatchewan River. He became not only a boat builder, but he built a ferry to help ferry people across the river before we had any of the bridges here. And he built a community. Here at the museum, we're looking at 3 different houses. So we have his first house that he built. So this is while it was just him working. And second house is as his businesses grew and became more successful. And he was really able to kind of thrive in this area. We've got a lot of family portraits out here. We've got John and Annie. We've got the whole family here of John and Stanley in the picture. And then you've got more of the family and community members present in more photos. So this is the second floor of John Walter's second house, and we do have some artifacts here from the Walter family. So we've got some skates that children would have used. So this would have been one of the children's rooms, and if you come through here, we've got John and Annie's bedroom. A third house is the large blue house that you can see in Kinsman Park, where he was finally able to kind of show off some of his success in the area. His third house had electricity and running water, so all of those great features that we would see in our own homes today. To me, whenever I come here, I think of a sense of community, and I think about this as a meeting grounds, really. I mean, we're on Treaty 6 territory, and I think about the people that have been coming here for thousands of years, and I think about how special it is to come here and get a sense of how people were living.
Land Back is a CBC original podcast where we uncover land theft in Canada and look at how Indigenous people are taking it all back.
And that's what empowered nations and empowered people to just literally steal land.
This is a consequence of your actions.
And it's time to give land back.
Land Back is out now on CBC Listen or wherever you get your podcasts.
Hi, I'm Amy Bell, and here's what's in your CBC Vancouver inbox.
Enjoy CBC Radio 1 while you're on the go with the free CBC Listen app. Get live and on-demand access to your favorite CBC radio programs like The Early Edition with Stephen Quinn. And never miss a special programming series, event, or contest. Subscribe to CBC Vancouver's e-newsletter at cbc.ca/Vancouver Inbox and keep connected with us.
Art can pursue many goals, but often it involves seeing something in a very new way. That's the stated aim of a Fredericton painter and his portraits of people without homes.
Well, I'm 43 years old. I've been an accountant for the government for about 20 years. And last year, my wife, who's an amazing person, encouraged me to take some time off to see if I could paint full-time, and it's been going awesome. So, one of the social issues that's always been on my mind was on basically discrimination based on wealth. Just listening to people, the way they talk about the homeless, it's like the homeless problem. And I was hearing it more and more, the homeless problem. They're clearing this area because there's a tent city. They're doing this because, they're gathering and there's drugs, there's all these things. This series is my way to try to bring that to people's attention, to hopefully do a mind shift. One of my sitters, it hasn't been that long since he was living on the streets, and you could tell like he was really kind of missing his home just when I was talking to him, the way he was talking. So I did his portrait on the reverse of a painting that I had of my home. So to try to give my home to this person. Another of the sitter, he looked he looked lonely. So I did his portrait over a painting of my wife and her companion dog. So I figured my wife's companion dog was bringing companionship to her. Maybe, even if it was on the other side of a painting, maybe somehow the universe would bring that element to him. But the gentleman in the last painting that I finished, I used a brand new piece of masonite, freshly primed, just because he was the inspiration for the series. So I figured I'd owed him the nicest, best painting surface that I could afford and find. I'm hoping to inspire people for themselves to also help the community, to donate Fredericton Community Kitchen, the Fredericton shelters, any way that they can.
The Canto pop boy band Mirror are one of the most popular music groups in Hong Kong right now, and two of its members are in town this week. They're here to help recruit local talent for Hong Kong's survival reality show Kingmaker Season 5. The finalists for Metro Vancouver and across North America will be announced at an event at the Aberdeen Centre Mall in Richmond tomorrow. CBC Radio's The Early Edition spoke with two of their biggest fans.
It's more like the show. It's called Kingmaker 5, or Kingmaker, I should say, which is like similar to American's Idol, Britain's Got Talent, that kind of show where it's a bunch of people who have dreams, who have talent, who come to pursue their dreams, like a dream job. Yeah.
I do see, because it's already the 5th season now. So from 2018 to now, so it's already the 5th season. Though they recruit different contestants, and also they show the talent in music and also in dancing, and that's why we are so into them.
Mobs of screaming fans are expected to be at tomorrow's announcement. More than 500 people could show up just to see two members of the group. Thanks for being with us tonight on CBC Vancouver News at 6. You can watch this newscast on CBC GM, our free app, as well as on YouTube, Instagram, and of course our website, cbc.ca/BC. Michelle Gassou will have your late local news at 11 o'clock right here after the National. Enjoy the weekend. Stay safe.